What's the cruelest thing a vet receptionist has ever said to you? My diabetic cat Oliver was having seizures at 2 a.m. when I rushed him to the only emergency vet within 50 miles, but the receptionist shook her head and tapped on a laminated sign on the desk that said, "Cash only after midnight." I held up my debit card and credit cards while Oliver convulsed in his carrier, begging her to make an exception, but she silently pointed to an ATM across the street that I already knew had been broken for months. When she finally spoke, she said, "The vet won't even look at him without $800 cash up front." I asked if she understood that my cat was in diabetic shock, and she rolled her eyes. That's exactly why we need payment first. Emotional owners make poor financial decisions. I pressed that Oliver's blood sugar must have crashed, and he needed glucose immediately, but she just shrugged and pointed to the waiting room where 3 other people were frantically calling friends for cash while their pets suffered. 20 minutes passed while Oliver's seizures got worse, and I approached the desk again begging to speak to the veterinarian, but she laughed and said he doesn't come out for non-paying cases after midnight. An older man next to me was sobbing because his dog had been hit by a car, but he only had $600, and she told him it wasn't enough and to wait outside. I offered him my last $200 from my wallet, but the receptionist said, "No combining payments from different clients. That complicates our bookkeeping." Another woman's rabbit was barely breathing, and the receptionist actually told her exotic pets are $1,200 minimum anyway. By the third time I begged for help, Oliver had gone from crying to silent and limp, and when I showed her his blue-tinged gums, she said, "Most pets brought in this late don't make it anyway. There's a nice wooded area out back if you need to say goodbye to your cat." I could have slapped her, but Oliver was more important, so I sat back down. An hour had passed, and I watched her play solitaire on her computer, while a man's bulldog vomited blood in the corner, and she threw a roll of paper towels without looking up. I asked how she could work here and watch animals die over payment, and she said, "I just follow protocol. You're disturbing the other clients." I pulled out my phone to call another vet, but she said, "No one else is open, and honestly, your cat probably won't survive the drive anyway." That's when a teenage girl carried in her seizing German Shepherd, and the receptionist took one look and said, "That's a big dog, so that'll be $1,500 cash." The girl just collapsed on the floor sobbing that it was her service animal, and the receptionist said, "Then you should have taken better care of it." That's when I remembered I had a bottle of corn syrup in my car from making holiday cookies at my mom's last week, and corn syrup is recommended to help cats in diabetic crises. I ran outside to grab it and came back loudly announcing, "I'm going to treat my cat myself since the so-called professionals don't care if he lives or dies." The receptionist threatened to call the police, but I'd already started recording and said, "Please do, and explain why you're refusing to treat a cat in diabetic crisis." I laid Oliver on the waiting room floor and started rubbing corn syrup on his gums, while 2 other people started filming the receptionist screaming at me to stop. The vet finally came storming out, and when he saw me rubbing syrup into Oliver's mouth while checking his pupils, his puffy red face turned pale. He grabbed Oliver from my hands and started working on him right there while shouting at the receptionist for glucose and IV supplies. With 5 witnesses filming everything, there was no way he could stop treating Oliver, and within 10 minutes, he finally had Oliver stabilized with proper dextrose. When the sun came up, a man in scrubs walked through the front door with coffee, and I assumed it was another vet coming for the morning shift until he froze when he saw medical equipment scattered around the waiting room and blood splattered all over the floor. He looked at the vet treating Oliver, and his face went from confusion to pure rage. "Brian, what the hell are you doing in my clinic?" he screamed, grabbing him by the collar. "I fired you 8 months ago for stealing Kita." That's when I realized this was the actual clinic owner, and the man who'd been treating Oliver wasn't supposed to be here at all. The receptionist tried to scurry off without being noticed, but the owner roared, "Don't you freaking move, Janet," before she could even get out from behind the counter. While the owner called 911, Brian and Janet stammered about emergencies while the waiting room occupants shouted about the cash demands and dying pets. The cops arrested them both, and when they searched Brian's car, they found $17,000 in cash and a fresh supply of ketamine he'd been stealing from other clinics to sell. Brian got 12 years for practicing without a license in drug distribution, after we learned 13 pets had died during his illegal overnight shifts, and Janet got 7 years for the 100,000 she'd stolen from desperate owners over their 6 months of illegal so-called pet care. Point.